Welcome back to TPUSA Live. It's John Root and MAGA hoax Stephen Davis. I cannot wait for this interview we're about to have with Dr. Carol Swain. She is so incredible when it comes to pushing back against CRT and a lot of this progressive social justice nonsense that's being implemented in schools. She has a background in political science and law from Vanderbilt University. It's going to be a great discussion about what we can do to make sure these progressive ideologies are out of schools, they're out of our workplace, and out of our life here in America. Dr. Carol Swain, welcome to TPUSA Live.
Thank you.
And then first off, too, a lot of people want to know, Dr. Swain, how did this get implemented in schools? How long has critical theory been around? Because this is not a new thing at all. And how did we allow this to really start taking over our workplace and our education system?
Critical theory itself has been around since the 1970s. And so it's been at college and university campuses. And some of the names that are familiar to people that have gone through the university system would be Dirk Bale, Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado. They were some of the early founders of critical theory, critical race theory. But if you look at critical theory itself, it goes back much further to Antonio Gramsci and some of the disciples of Karl Marx. When economic Marxism failed, students of Karl Marx began to ponder and to discuss why economic Marxism failed. And Antonio Gramsci came up with the concept of cultural hegemony. And he advocated, and later Herbert Marcuse, changing the culture from within and creating coalitions of disaffected groups. And so those theories have been kicking around on the college campuses for decades. And I would argue that it started seeping into K through 12 education during the second term of the Obama administration.
See, and that's why I see there's a lot of problems with the educational system when it comes to CRT, because it's really just seeping in and it's just permeated throughout the, especially K through 12. Do you think the effects of CRT can be reversed at this point in time? And can we catch it in a certain amount of time and be able to get these people's minds off of this type of ideology and back on course to something more productive for America?
You know, last summer, I co-authored a book, Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. And that was written for parents. It was to help them identify what critical race theory is, where it comes from, how it impacts our society, why it's un-American, un-Christian, runs counter to civil rights laws and the Constitution. And so we had 2 chapters on how to fight back against critical race theory. But what I have learned since then, and I was not really focused on it, but there are other critical theories that are affecting K through 12 education that are just as serious, in some ways more serious, because we're focused on critical race theory almost exclusively, while critical queer theory, critical feminist theory, and also just an ideology that is anti-Christian, anti-Western civilization, pro-paganism, as far as advocating other religions, that also is impacting our children and the sexualization of children. And so if you look at the books, the articles, the films, the teaching materials that are pushing CRT, they're also pushing other dangerous ideologies. And that may be one factor in why the child suicide rate is so high. They're pulling out supports, and sometimes through the teaching materials and through books that they have distilled the ideas down to the K through 12. They have children's books that take these complex ideas and they indoctrinate our children with them. And the children are so young because some of the books even are targeted at kids that are in first grade, second grade, and the books don't always go home with the children. So parents may notice changes in their children's behavior. And it's not just the race and the demonization of white people. It reaches all across everything that makes a child, And it may very well account for the fact that kids are depressed. I would be depressed too, especially, as a girl or a boy, if I was told that I could choose my own gender and that I may not really be a little girl or a little boy, that it's up to me.
And then now we live in this world too, where they say like, "Hey, I can come out and just say, hey, I'm a woman. Don't question me." Right. That's the world that we live in right now. I'm so glad you talk about that in Black Eye for America. Speaking about the weaponization of these things, of critical theory, I'm glad you bring up other aspects of critical theory, because we really do get stuck on this one aspect, CRT. Obviously, that needs to be dismantled in every sense of the word, and you do a great job using your platform for that, Dr. Swain. But tell us about this weaponization and what people can do to fight back against it. What are the action items you give people?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I believe it's purposeful to have us focused on race, because most people are afraid to push back on race. And so it allows them to get away with the other things that they're doing. One of the things that I believe is very positive is that people need to organize the way Moms for Liberty, Moms for America, just various parent groups across the country have organized. That's important. It's also important for people to realize that they are protected by laws that we have, that parents and people have legal rights, protections under the civil rights laws and the Constitution to protect them from hostile learning and work environments. So they need to utilize themselves of those resources, and they need to know what critical theory is, and critical race theory in particular, and the fact that it does have Marxist roots, and it's very harmful to all of our children, not just the white children that may find themselves shamed and bullied, but also to minority children, because they're being told that they are victims of permanent racism. They're being told that they can't do standard math, and so math has to be changed for them, that they don't have to speak standard English, that working hard, getting to places on time, being well behaved, that all of that is whiteness. And if you look at the messages that they're sending to minority students, they're saying that you're inferior. And it's really a white supremacy argument, in the sense that what we're being told is that white people have this valuable property interest in their skin color, and that white people have to liberate these other groups, that these other groups are not free, they're not equal, that it's up to white people, and that only white people have an obligation to be anti-racist, when we know that everyone has an obligation to be anti-racist. And I think that CRT itself can be dismantled on the basis of our civil rights laws, the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, and then just reaffirming human decency. In the 1960s, we decided what kind of nation we wanted to be. And as a consequence, we passed 3 major civil rights laws, and those laws made us equal under the law. The discrimination and prejudice that existed after the passage of those civil rights laws was individual prejudice, individual discrimination, and that is something that we all have to fight back against.
I love that. I absolutely love it, because one thing that I always speak out against is the white savior complex of these white liberals, and how they don't understand that what they're promoting is in fact racism itself. And I just,
it is so racist. It is so racist. It is white supremacy. And here's another thing, is that when you look at the progressives, they've always been the ones that push segregation and eugenics and social engineering. And they've always treated minorities as inferior. They are resegregating. They've already been doing it at the university campuses. They're trying to do it in K through 12. There's nothing new in the playbook.
And it's something we talk about quite a bit on this show, is the indoctrination, not only in K through 12, but when you start going off to college. And I know there's even people I've talked to on the media team here, they're having back and forth with people about the nuclear family, and how we need to just totally dismantle this aspect of the Western culture. And we need to have this postmodernist view about it. And there's destructionism inside of everything now. People are looking at BLM, who wants to get rid of the nuclear family. And we know that families are dramatically more successful, and kids are way more empowered in their life to be more independent when they have a mom and a dad in the home.
Absolutely.
It seems like there's just another attack on that in this Western idea.
That is very true. And if you look at BLM, they have 13 guiding principles. One is restorative justice. One is affirming transgender identities, affirming a couple of things about affirming the LGBT affiliations, but they also introduce kids to concepts that are just so far over their head, and they have it directed at every grade level, including kindergarten. And when they talk about empathy and compassion and stuff like that, it's always framed in one way. It's all about race. It's all about Blackness. It's not about the things that would bring people together. And to me, that we should always point to their curriculum, which is online, whenever someone tells us that critical race theory is not being taught to children in K through 12, their curriculum shows that they have targeted at every grade level, and they have books that carry forth those ideas. And so it's just a talking point when the political left tells us that CRT is not in the public schools. Yes, it is in the public schools, along with critical queer theory, critical feminist theory, and some other critical theories that, that I'm not sure exactly what to call them, but they definitely have an agenda, and it's not a healthy agenda for our children or our society.
Yeah, I've noticed one thing when it comes to the CRT being pushed and peddled, the idea of equity, right? We need equity to be able to prop up the Black person because they can't seem to get ahead without some type of them being put in a head start, right? And I hear a lot of that in regards to the case for reparations, right? We need reparations. We need to correct the issues of the past, right? What would be your best way of attacking this idea that reparations will indeed somehow bring about some type of equity or get the country back on track from its systemically racist past? Or present,
First of all, we know that the political left has rejected colorblind society and equal opportunity. And my generation, we wanted non-discrimination and equal opportunity. We just wanted a chance to show what we could do. And many of us went out and we showed the world what we could do, even though we came from disadvantaged backgrounds. Well, reparations, they have been pushing for that for, more than 40 years. And it's so complex now because it's not about trying to repair the impact of slavery on the descendants of slaves or anything like that. And we know that it's fraught with all sorts of problems because obviously there are no live slaveholders or slaves. And they have redefined the class of people who would benefit to pretty much include anyone of color, no matter when they arrived in the US. And so even if money was poured into it above the trillions of dollars that have already been poured into affirmative action and programs and private philanthropy to help racial and ethnic minorities, there's no reason to believe that it would be successful. What I think would happen is that it would end up in the pockets of affluent racial and ethnic minorities and their white liberal friends, and that minority communities would be the same or worse off. And so it's about money, but it's not about repairing any damages. It's not going to be able to beneficially add to what's already been done since slavery to eradicate the past and present effects of discrimination.
And then, Dr. Swain, we got a little less than a minute here. Where can people find your book? Once again, that's Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. Where can they find that, and where can they find you on social media to make sure they have the tools to fight back against this stuff?
Well, my website is bethepeoplenews.com. Instead of We the People, bethepeoplenews.com.
I love that.
The book can be purchased at Amazon, through my website at Logos Books. That's a Christian bookstore. And all major booksellers. They're in some bookstores. And I think it's real important for people to realize that critical race theory is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe that we are winning the battle. We will win the battle, but you have to realize that it is everywhere. It has permeated every sector of our lives, including the military. And if we're going to save our nation, we have to root it out, because at the end of the day, it's not about benefiting minorities. It's really about pushing a Marxist agenda.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Swain.
Thank
We
you.
really, really appreciate it. Everybody, coming up next, President Biden's got a potty mouth. We'll see you in about a minute.